Okay, so we're going to go and start working on the front of the bike, but I noticed you put the rear wheel back in. I guess that was just for balance, because we've got it off the ground.
Yeah, I don't really like working on bikes with both wheels out. It feels quite unsafe. So just having that rear wheel in, you know, if the bike does rock back, it's not going to fall off the stand or anything like that.
Okay, so that's all the work done on the rear of the bike, and now we work up to the front of the bike. And I guess what's left there is the cockpit and the front shock. So we worked on the cockpit, the controls, the handlebars, all of that stuff first. So why are we changing that from the OEM standard?
The main reason is rider input. That's one of the most important things for us. So bringing the bars up higher gives you a better riding position for off-road or standing position for long days. The bars we use have a lot less back sweep than the sort of OEM style bars, so they're more suited to elbows up off-road riding style, and just makes the bike feel a little more pronounced in its stance as well.
And I guess adding the handguards is a bit of protection, considering this bike maybe dropped a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, handguards for us are a must on sort of any adventure bike. If you're riding bushwhacking, or even if you're on rocks, they're still protecting something, whether it's your hands or the bike itself.
Okay, great. So what's the first thing we did to do that? This part can take a little bit of time. It's not complicated, but there's some fiddly steps to it.
Yeah, you definitely need to have a bit of a system for it. First job on the BMWs is the bar ends. That's just a simple Allen key removal. And then you want to start by loosening all the controls and clusters. You need to get the left-hand grip off, which unfortunately is usually glued on quite tight. So a bit of heat can help that, depending on sort of what your working conditions are. It might come off easily. It's middle of winter here, so we're working in the cold, so we have to use a heat gun to get that off, unfortunately, and an airline just to expand the grip, same as you've seen in other videos. But once we've got the controls loosened and the pins out, it's a case of removing the OEM bars and removing them one left hand first and then right hand side, so you can get enough length on the cables to get all the controls off. And after that, it's a case of removing the risers. So we change the actual riser unit. We keep the same triple clamp, but change the riser unit to give 20 more mil rise. And it also allows us to add the Renthal Fat Bars, which is one of the next steps.
Yeah, okay, so the actual controls, the light units, the indicator units, they don't actually fully disassemble. You've just got to loosen them, and then
you want about 5-6 mil of clearance, and you'll see, if you can just look down, you'll see a pin, and that locates through a hole in the handlebars. All bikes have to have that now. It's just to stop the clusters or the throttle body actually rotating around the bars. Okay. So that you might have a bit of trouble getting it off, but it's just a snug fit. So you just got to make sure you put in pressure downwards towards the pin.
Okay, and then they just slide off, and once you've undone the central clamp, does that handlebar just come away?
That's it. Yeah, just take the top clamp off, slide the controls and clusters off, and then you're left with just the riser unit, which is to remove.
Okay. So we've taken that off, and we're back to essentially just the top triple clamp, and we've got these nice gold fat bars that we're going to put on. So how are the fat bars different to the OEM standard?
So obviously, apart from the bar diameter itself, the fat bars have got a lot less back sweep on the bar and a lot more rise. That's more suited towards enduro style adventure riding. Gives you a better geometry for standing on the bike, better input, especially in terms of having your elbows out. You're in a more rigid attacking position, keeps the front end a bit more secure.
Okay. And did we just take them straight out of the packet and put them on?
Unfortunately not, no. We have to replicate the drilled holes that are in the OEM bars for the clusters. So this is a case of sort of measuring, be quite careful, measure twice, cut once on the holes for the clusters. The rotation is very important on the clusters as well, so you need to take note that the OEM bars, the holes for the clusters actually point directly up and down on the left and right hand cluster. So if you're not sure where you're going to have your clusters or where you want your bars, I'd suggest you put your bars on the bike and eye it up, and then you know for your cluster rotation it has to be directly up or down in relation to where the bars would be in the bike.
Yeah, so this is a point really where it's quite important to slow down. You're going to be drilling a hole that's quite important. You're not going to break anything, but if you drill it in the wrong place, you're either going to have your controls slightly wrong for you, or you're going to have to drill an extra hole. So it's worth just taking your time, get your tape measure out and just kind of make sure that everything's where it needs to be on this.
Definitely. And I'd say test it before you put them in the bike as well. So just slide one cluster on at a time. Once you've done the first one, double check that everything looks right and you think it will fit how it should.
Okay, great. And in the case of actually drilling it, it's fairly standard drill bit?
Yeah, just a 5mm drill bit. You want just a small vise will hold the bars. You can use a bit of rag to secure them or stop them getting scratched. You can see that I used a punch just to make sure that the drill was centered. You can get them from pretty much anywhere, if not use an old blunt drill as a punch.
Okay, great. And then we've got the holes drilled. We bring them back and we just start rebuilding it.
Yeah, so we got to feed in like we took them off. And at that point you can then put the bars back into the new risers and put the top clamp on to secure them while you're working on the grips.
Okay, so these are new Rally Raid risers that it's going on, and we've got a new clamp, and you get to keep the BMW badge.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, you know, obviously they're quite important to be torqued up to the right setting.
Yeah, so one thing that's interesting about the risers on this bike itself, they're held in through rubber bungs. So although logically you might think you need to torque it up as hard as you can, they're designed to actually be torqued up to a certain level and left at that level so they can rotate in the event of crash or force. They'll actually rotate instead of damaging themselves. So all the torque settings are provided in the instructions, and like I said, even across diagonally or in a star formation is the best way to do it, because then you know you've got even pressure across the unit instead of one side and then the other.
Yeah, great. And I guess the last part of that is replacing the rubber grip.
Yeah, so putting the rubber grip back on, or if you had a bit of trouble getting the grip off in the first place, you can always go and buy another set. You get a set of grip glue with your new set of grips. If not, you'd probably have a grip glue in the workshop, and just grip that left hand one. Make sure it's in good warm sort of condition so the grip sets, and just tap it on.
Great.
Leave it.
Okay, and something else that we changed on this bike was the actual brake levers. So again, what's the difference between the OEM ones and the ones that you're putting on?
There's a couple of reasons in the BMW's case. One of the main ones you might have seen before we changed, the levers are so long on this bike, they come out further than the handlebars itself. You can't actually get a set of Barkbusters onto the bike without chopping the levers. So these levers are similar to sort of the ones we use for the Honda. They've got a 6-point positioning system on them, available in anodized silver or gold, and they're just a nice little addition. You can use 1-finger, 2-finger braking and clutch. And because of the adjustable position, it's good for sort of smaller riders or larger riders that often have trouble reaching, or they find the clutches in too close and it's giving them hand cramp.
Yeah, I've got quite small hands, and I know on my bike it's been quite helpful to be able to fine tune the setting of that, and definitely helps with the 1-finger stuff, which is important if you're doing off-road stuff.
Definitely.
Okay, and so the last part of that process was about getting the handguards back on. So you can get lots of different kinds. What do we use on this bike?
We choose to use Barkbusters. We like their design. They've been a long-standing company sort of thing. We're really happy with the quality of their products. They take a slight bit of modification to get them to fit perfectly, as you see on the 310. But I mean, it's worth it for the end product. They look really nice. We use the VPS guards on this exact model. They're available in black or white online.
And what was the modification? What did we have to do?
You have to drill another hole for it's a 10mm hole at the front of the support bar, and this just allows, unfortunately, because of the clusters on every bike's different, it just takes a bit of tweaking. So by drilling that hole just 10mm up from the original one, you can get it all to match up perfectly without putting any extra pressure on the bars.
It's definitely worth drilling that hole. You could try and force the clamp into the existing hole, but it's always going to be under tension, I guess.
Yeah, and if you're riding with your handguards under tension the whole time, realistically, as soon as you take one knock, they're going to spin around because all that tension has to go somewhere.
Okay, and so the last thing we did up front there was the windscreen, which is a pretty straightforward swap.
Yeah, it's just 4 bolts on and off. You provided the new bolts with the new windscreen. We developed this with Power Bonds, so this is sort of you can only get this from us, designed to work with Barkbusters and the 310. It gives quite a big increase in the actual height of the windscreen as well, which is good for the road work in between trails.
Yeah, I think what I like about it is it does give you that height and that protection, but because of the cutout for the Barkbusters, which gives you the full lock that you need, it means that it's not an overpoweringly large screen. It's still got quite a light feel to it.
It doesn't add any bulk to the real front, the cockpit itself.
Yeah, it's definitely got quite a rally feel at the front. Okay, so that whole process, I think it's worth setting a little bit of time aside for that. Nothing in there is complicated, but it can be a little bit stressful, especially if you start getting bogged down like we did a little bit on getting the handguard off. So an hour and a half?
I'd say an hour and a half to 2 hours. You're definitely getting that grip off. Take your time if you haven't got another set of grips, because you don't want to damage that in any way. And again, working with your bars, you're in that area where you've got your painted tank, you've got your windscreen, your speedo, so you just want to make sure you're not going to scratch anything. Lay a towel down on the fuel tank or something like that before you start, because obviously if the bars rotate, you could have some issues there.